Hi, this is Kathy Withers. I'm at Withers Wool. I raise Angora goats and merino sheep for their fiber, and I'm always experimenting to see what I can come up with. My inspiration currently is, or are, these corn that are beautiful and nice and colorful. So this one here is really pretty. It's got shades of yellow, purple, and orange. And I actually had a bag of the perfect colorway at the mill when I went to pick it up, so I spun it. Okay, so my original goal when I started out was to spin using mohair and using the coil technique of plying in order to create nice, shiny, beautiful yarns that reflected the sheen in the corn. Well, the first one I did was the cherry here. It's cherry and black, and it totally reflects that colored corn. I did another experiment, and I won't show you because it didn't turn out so well, but I blended the colors in one of the different corns. It had some purple in it, yellow, orange, and red, and when I blended them together, they kind of ended up looking horrible, so it's going to hit the dye pot. So as I was spinning, I kind of realized that the yarns really, it makes a difference which kind of fiber you choose to use. For example, I know even kid mohair spun up as a coil is going to be shiny. It's not quite as shiny when it's a single, but it really has a sheen when it's coil spun. And this is actually the easiest yarn, art yarn, to spin, and it's usually the first one I teach when I teach a class. You're not going to get a demo of that today, sorry. I realize I'm too long-winded most of the time. This one here, these are all available on Etsy, by the way, on my Withers Wool page. This one here, and it doesn't come through the screen that well, but it is a yellow mauve, and it's from that first bag that I showed you with the yellow and mauve colored corn. And it is also kid mohair. First haircut, nice and shiny. This one here is the single that goes with it, and it's nowhere near as shiny as when you ply it. Now, the funny thing is that these two yarns right here were spun exactly the same as this one right here, the one that's merino. So I filled the bobbin with each of these colors, and then I plied them. The mohair, 100% mohair, totally had a beautiful sheen. The orange that I used, it doesn't have it because merino does not have a sheen. It's more, if you think in terms of, paper, photo paper has a sheen to it. These two have a sheen. Regular printer paper is kind of the same thing as merino. It's a lot flatter color, and it's not going to have the sheen. But the really biggest thing I want you to notice is, look, I'm hoping this bird that's in here will fly out with the windows open. So if you hear fluttering in the background, that's what it is. Mohair is a longer wool, and I won't say it's necessarily coarse, but it is coarser than merino. Merino is a very, very fine wool, and when I'm talking about merino, I'm not talking about the commercially processed. I am talking about the merino that comes off of merinos that is not mass-produced. It comes back from a mill in beautiful roving that's nice, soft, and lofty. It's not like I have a brand here at the shop, and it's nothing like that. That stuff, if it sits for a while, it becomes so stuck together that it actually can damage your hands trying to draft it to be able to spin it. So I tend to use that now on my carder to split it up and blend it with other things, and that's kind of how I'm going to get rid of it. So the merino here, if you look at the size of the coils, you'll notice that they are significantly smaller and less defined. Even though I spun both of them the same, the merino on the same whorl, everything, the merino ended up looking lace weight, whereas the mohair looked sport weight. Spun exactly the same. It's just a function of how the two different fibers are. One is a lot finer than the other, no matter what. They're both equally soft. Actually, in this case, I would say that the mohair is actually softer than the merino. But everything was done exactly the same, and you get a totally different look out of it. So, to show you some examples, because I really don't have a lot of them, what I have usually tends to get sold or disappeared. So this is a nice fall-colored scarf. And this section right here, even though it looks like it's got lumps and bumps, this is a coiled yarn. It's a blend of mohair and wool. So it has some defined parts and some not so defined parts. In order to get a look, as I knitted, I kind of shoved some of the coils together to get a little more drama in it. So it's not as obvious. And then this section here, this is actually a super coil. And the super coil is a combination of coils and a thick and thin that gets slid up and becomes a poof. Well, this is what a mohair one will end up looking like. Nice little bit of detailed relief there, nothing too stunning. If you go with straight wool, because this is all wool in this piece right here, and on this piece I actually used the same size needle for the entire thing. So areas that had super coils, which are much heavier, are nice and stable. The finer yarns end up having a slightly more lacy look. They're not lacy, but they are. So this is a coil done with merino, and you can see that you have a little bit of texture here, but nothing like the drama over here. So it's kind of interesting to know, and it's something to be aware of, because if I create a pattern and I tell you I used mohair for it, if you want the same look, you have to buy mohair. If it says merino, you need to buy something that says merino. If it says kid mohair merino, it means it's a blend, and then you need a little bit of those. So here is, can't tell, but I'm pretty sure that this section right here is 100% kid mohair coils, and you can see the difference in the texture and the difference in the look. And this is in knitting. In crochet, kind of the same thing happens, but with the crochet, it ends up on the back side. Then when you're weaving, this piece over here, I could only find one section that actually had coils in it, and going throughout this piece right here, the red is coils, and the yellow and black. Let me see. I guess you can't even see that because it's too high up. So this one here is coils. And there's a little bit of merino in it, but no mohair. And what really happens is that because the mohair is a longer fiber, you'll kind of get the same effect using Teeswater. You'll get the same effect using caracal, and some of the other long wools. You won't get the softness necessarily unless you're using the first fleeces of those. But to get that effect, you can't use a fine wool fiber. It just doesn't work. And then the last thing I wanted to point out here before I say goodbye for the day is the merino yarn that I spun is actually this color here. And by itself, I would call it orange. So I named it Blazing Orange. So if you're trying to find it in a hurry on my website, it's one of the last things I listed, but it says Blazing Orange. But if you look at here next to this other color, this one is also orange. And the difference between them is, and I happen to know what was in the bag when I sent it to the mill, is this is a combination of red and yellow. This one was dyed orange. And if you look closely at it, let me see if I can see it through here, then you'll see that it's kind of fuzzy. Well, this is the next one that I'm going to spin. I'm finishing the single for that one. But this one here is a blend of both mohair and wool, mostly mohair though. So it's going to have a halo, a fuzzy effect. It's not a first haircut, so it's not going to be quite as soft as the red and black one is, but it will be beautiful, and it will have that sheen, because if you look at the two of them together, you can see before you even start to spin that that's not as shiny as that one. So I'll keep you posted on how I'm going with the different ones, and since I'm always kind of too long-winded and there might be something else that I forgot to say, I'm going to actually do an experiment and do a slight photo shoot and put that out on my Facebook page as well as the video. And I will be able to see whether the videos are as effective as my photo shoots or not. And that will kind of determine the way I go in the future. But in the meantime, I'll see you next week, same time, 11 o'clock on Thursday. I hope you enjoyed.